The fluorescent lights of my grocery store, Carter's Corner, hummed their usual tune on a crisp March afternoon in downtown Millbrook. I was restocking the organic tomatoes, whistling along to the oldies station on my little transistor radio, when I saw them. 3 young people clustered near the canned peaches, their phones out and pointed directly at me. I straightened my apron, a bit self-conscious. "Can I help you find something?" I asked, trying to be welcoming. The tallest one, a girl with brightly colored hair, giggled and whispered something to her friends. I couldn't quite hear what she said, but the tone was dismissive. "Now, we're good," the boy with the backwards baseball cap finally answered, his eyes glued to his phone screen. He was still recording. It was then that I noticed the little red light blinking on his phone, the unmistakable sign of a video being taken. "Are you recording me?" I asked, my voice rising slightly. The girl with the bright hair snorted. "Relax, lady. It's just for fun." Fun? At my expense? My stomach churned. They continued to whisper and giggle amongst themselves, occasionally glancing at me and then back at their phones. I felt a strange mixture of confusion and unease. Were they making fun of me, my floral print dress, my sensible shoes, the way I hummed along to Doris Day? "What's so funny?" I asked, my voice now laced with a hint of steel. The boy finally lowered his phone. "Nothing, Grandma. Just documenting your vintage deal," he said, the word vintage dripping with sarcasm. The other 2 burst into laughter. "Vintage," I repeated, my cheeks burning. "I prefer classic." My hands trembled slightly as I gripped the edge of the tomato crate. They didn't respond. They just turned and sauntered out of the store, their laughter echoing behind them. I stood there, frozen, feeling like I'd been slapped across the face. I had poured my heart and soul into this store, into this community for over 30 years, and now these kids, these strangers, were mocking me, reducing me to a caricature. The transistor radio played on, oblivious to the sting of their words. That evening, the feeling of humiliation lingered. Eleanor, my daughter, called. "Mom, are you okay?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "I saw a video online, Eatswell. It's you at the store." My heart sank. "The video, of course. It's nothing, dear," I said, trying to sound nonchalant. "Just some silly kids." But I knew it wasn't nothing. I could feel the heat creeping up my neck again, the same burning shame I felt in the store. "Mom," Eleanor continued gently, "people are buying me in the comments. Julian showed it to me. He was so upset. Julian, my future son-in-law, always the sweet one. The thought of him seeing that video, seeing me ridiculed online, made my chest ache. I forced a laugh. "Oh, those internet trolls," I said dismissively. "Don't you worry about me, honey. I've dealt with worse." But the truth was, I hadn't. Not like this. This felt different, more invasive, more public. After I hung up with Eleanor, I sat alone in my small apartment above the store, staring out at the twinkling lights of Millbrook. The city I loved, the city I'd built my life in, suddenly felt hostile. I replayed the scene in my head, the kids' laughter, the condescending tone, the word vintage. A wave of anger washed over me, hot and powerful. Then something shifted. The anger didn't dissipate. It transformed. It hardened into something colder, sharper. Resolve. I wouldn't let them get away with this. I wouldn't let them diminish me, reduce me to an object of ridicule. I knew these kids, or at least I knew enough. They were students at the local university, and I knew something else they didn't. I owned the building their favorite coffee shop was in. I also happened to know that their lease was up for renewal soon. A slow smile crept across my face. They wanted to play games, fine. I could play too. I pulled out my laptop and began to type, my fingers flying across the keyboard. An email to their landlord. A casual inquiry about the upcoming lease renewals, just a small seed planted, a little nudge in the right direction. I knew how these things worked. A few carefully placed calls, a few strategic whispers, and their little world could start to unravel. They thought they had the power, the anonymity of the internet as their shield. They were wrong. This was my city, my building, my game, and it was just beginning. Rain lashed against the grocery store windows, mirroring the storm inside me. You think you're so clever, don't you? I asked, my voice trembling. Eleanor and Julian, along with their friend, stood by the canned peaches, looking like deer caught in headlights. They'd been back in the store for a few minutes, pretending to browse, but I knew they were just waiting for the right moment to slip out. I'd seen the video, filming me like that, posting it online for everyone to laugh at. Eleanor shifted uncomfortably. Oh, Beulah, it wasn't like that, she said, her voice tight. It was just a bit of fun. Fun, I repeated, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. Fun at my expense, at the expense of my dignity. Julian stepped forward, his hand resting on Eleanor's arm. It wasn't meant to be malicious, he said, his tone placating. People are just overreacting. Overreacting. My voice rose, despite my efforts to control it. Thousands of comments, hundreds of shares, all mocking me, mocking my store, mocking everything I've worked for. I gestured around the small, brightly lit space. This store is my life, and you've turned it into a joke. Their friend, whose name I still didn't know, finally spoke. Look, we're sorry if you were offended, he mumbled, avoiding my gaze. We can take the video down. Take it down, I scoffed, as if that will erase the humiliation, the ridicule, the sheer unkindness. The tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over, hot and stinging. I've spent my life building this business, brick by painstaking brick. And you, in your arrogance and ignorance, have tried to tear it down in a single afternoon. Eleanor reached out a hesitant hand. Beulah, please, she pleaded. We didn't mean for it to blow up like this. I turned away, unable to bear the sight of her. Get out, I choked out, waving my hand dismissively. Just get out of my store. They shuffled out, their apologies ringing hollow in the now empty aisles. I sank onto a stool behind the counter, the weight of the world pressing down on me. The rain continued to batter the windows, the rhythmic drumming a soundtrack to my despair. I looked around at the shelves, stocked with familiar products, each one a testament to years of hard work. Now it all felt tainted, tarnished by their cruel prank. The bell above the door chimed, announcing a new customer, Mrs. Rodriguez. My regular from down the street smiled warmly. Good afternoon, Beulah, she said, her voice a welcome balm. The usual please. I forced a smile. trying to project a sense of normalcy. "Of course, Mrs. Rodriguez," I replied, busying myself with her order. As I bagged her groceries, I listened to her chatter about her grandchildren, her garden, the mundane details of everyday life. For a moment, I allowed myself to be drawn into her world, a world untouched by the viral storm raging online. But the respite was short-lived. As soon as she left, the weight of it all came crashing back down. I picked up my phone, the screen displaying the hateful comments, the mocking memes, the sheer volume of vitriol directed at me. My stomach churned, nausea rising in my throat. I wanted to scream, to break something, to lash out at the world that had so suddenly turned against me. But then a flicker of something else ignited within me, something colder, harder, something that whispered of retribution. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. They thought they could get away with this. Did they? They thought they could humiliate me and walk away unscathed. They were wrong. I knew this building. I knew its secrets, its vulnerabilities, and I knew the weaknesses of its tenants, especially those of Eleanor's fiancé, Julian. He worked at a prestigious law firm, a firm that prided itself on its impeccable reputation, a reputation that could be easily tarnished. And the apartment he shared with Eleanor, let's just say the landlord wasn't exactly known for his leniency when it came to lease violations. A few strategically placed calls, a few carefully worded emails, and their perfect little world could start to crumble. A slow smile spread across my face, the first genuine smile I'd felt since the video went viral. The rain outside had stopped, and a sliver of sunlight peeked through the clouds. It was a small sign, perhaps, but a sign nonetheless. The storm within me was beginning to subside, replaced by a quiet resolve, a cold, calculating plan. They wanted to play games, fine. Let the games begin. They had underestimated me. They had underestimated the lengths a mother would go to protect her dignity, her livelihood, her life, and they were about to learn a very valuable lesson. The curtains were drawn, the apartment dim even at midday. A few days ago, this place had felt like my sanctuary, my reward after a long day downstairs at Carter's grocery. Now, it felt like a cage. Eleanor called earlier, her voice strained. "Mom," she'd said, have you seen the internet?" I had. Of course, I'd seen it all. I picked at my untouched breakfast, a plate of toast now cold and unappetizing. Eleanor had tried to be gentle, but I could hear the pity in her tone. Julian showed me, she'd murmured. He said people are being awful. Awful was an understatement. The video, shaky and poorly lit, captured me restocking the Campeches, humming along to the oldies station I always played in the store. The accompanying commentary, though, was anything but harmless. They called me Grandma from the crypt, mocked my clothes, my hair, even the way I walked. Thousands of comments, each one a tiny, venomous sting. "I'm fine, Eleanor," I'd managed, my voice steadier than I felt. "Don't you worry about me." But the truth was, I wasn't fine. I felt exposed, violated. My little store, my pride and joy, had become the backdrop for my public humiliation. I'd worked hard for everything I had, built this business from the ground up after my husband passed, and now some kids with a phone had turned me into a laughingstock. The phone rang again, startling me. This time it was Julian. "Mrs. Carter," he began, his voice hesitant. "I just wanted to check in on you." Eleanor's worried. I appreciated his concern, but it was a painful reminder of how far this had spread. "Thank you, Julian," I said, trying to sound upbeat. "But really, I'm all right." I forced a chuckle, just a little overwhelmed by all this tension. After hanging up, I wandered over to the window, peeking through the blinds. The street below bustled with life, oblivious to the turmoil brewing inside me. I watched a young couple stroll hand in hand, laughing. For a moment, a pang of envy pierced through the numbness. They had their whole lives ahead of them, untouched by the cruelty of the world. I remembered a time when I felt that way too, full of hope and optimism. Now all I felt was a bone-deep weariness. My gaze drifted upwards, to the apartments above my store, 3 units, all occupied by tenants I knew well, or so I thought. One was a young couple, always bickering, constantly late on their rent. Another was a struggling artist, whose canvases spilled out into the hallway. And the third was occupied by a group of college students, always loud, always partying. A sudden, chilling realization washed over me. The shaky camera work, the muffled giggles in the background of the video, it sounded like them. I thought back to the snippets of their conversations I'd overheard in the hallway, their obsession with social media, their constant quest for viral content. The anger began to simmer, a low burn in my gut. I'd been kind to these tenants, understanding of their struggles. I hadn't raised their rent in years, even when I probably should have. And this was how they repaid me, by turning my life into a cruel online spectacle. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath. The weariness didn't disappear, not entirely, but something else began to take its place, a quiet resolve, a steeling of my spine. I walked over to my desk, pulling out a thick file folder. Inside were the leases for each of the apartments, meticulously organized. I knew every detail of their agreements, every clause, every loophole. I knew who was late on their payments, who had violated the terms of their lease. I knew their vulnerabilities, their secrets, and as I flipped through the pages, a plan began to form in my mind. A plan for a different kind of video, one that wouldn't go viral, but would be far more impactful. A video that would deliver a message, not to the world, but to a select few. The phone rang again, this time a notification from my bank. My Social Security check had arrived, a small amount, barely enough to cover my expenses. Looking at the number on the screen, a bitter laugh escaped my lips. They thought they had taken everything from me, my dignity, my peace of mind. But they didn't know what I had. They didn't know about the leverage I held, the power I wielded in this building, in this neighborhood. They thought they were playing a game. They had no idea the game I was about to start. They mocked my vintage style. Perhaps they should have considered that some vintages age exceptionally well, and some, like a fine wine, become even more potent with time. The fluorescent lights of my store hummed, a stark contrast to the quiet rage simmering inside me. Eleanor called a few minutes ago, her voice laced with a mixture of pity and something else, a disgust. "Mom," she'd said, her tone tight. "Are you okay? People are saying awful things online." I told her I was fine, of course. But fine was far from the truth. The video, the mocking comments, The sheer audacity of those youngsters, it all churned inside me like a storm. I straightened a stack of canned peaches, the familiar weight grounding me. I'd built this store, brick by painful brick, after my husband passed. It was more than just a business. It was my life's work, a testament to my resilience. And now, these children were trying to tear it down with a few clicks. Closing up, Mrs. Carter, Mr. Henderson, my evening stalker, asked, his voice gentle. Just a few more things to do, Henry. I replied, forcing a smile. He nodded, his eyes kind. Don't let those internet hooligans get to you. They're just jealous. Jealous of what? My outdated dresses, my sensible shoes, I sighed, rubbing my temples. Henry meant well, but he didn't understand. This wasn't just about a silly video. It was about respect, about dignity. I watched him leave, the bell above the door jingling softly behind him. Alone in the quiet store, I walked to the back office, the weight of the day pressing down on me. I sat at my desk, the glow of the computer screen illuminating my face. The comments were still there, a cruel chorus echoing in my mind. Grandma's lost in time. One read, another, even more cutting, suggested I belonged in a museum. My hand trembled as I reached for the aged ledger, its pages filled with years of meticulous records. Not just inventory, but every transaction, every lease agreement, every late payment from the tenants in the apartments above. My building, my rules. A flicker of an idea, a seed of defiance, began to sprout in the darkness of my despair. Julian, Eleanor's fiancé, worked for that credit scoring company, didn't he? A rising star, eager to please, always boasting about his access to sensitive information. He'd even offered, in that condescending way of his, to help me understand modern finance. Perhaps it was time he had a lesson of his own. I flipped through the ledger, stopping at the page for apartment 3B. The young woman who lived there, the one with the perpetually late rent and the ever-changing hair color. She was one of them, wasn't she? The one with the phone always pointed, capturing every unsuspecting moment. And the young man with the expensive sneakers and the disdainful smirk. He'd been in the video too, lurking in the background, his laughter like a dagger. A slow smile spread across my face. I knew their names, their habits, their weaknesses, and I knew exactly how to use that knowledge to my advantage. I spent the next hour poring over the ledger, cross-referencing names with the faces in the video, confirming their apartment numbers. Then I pulled up the building's online maintenance portal. A few strategic clicks, a few carefully worded complaints, and the wheels were set in motion. A plumbing issue reported for 3B right before her big date. A pest control request for 2A, just in time for his important meeting. Small inconveniences, perhaps, but enough to disrupt their carefully curated lives, enough to plant a seed of doubt, of unease. But Julian, his transgression required a more pointed response. He thought he was so clever, so above it all. He'd probably dismiss this whole incident as a harmless prank. I closed my eyes, picturing his smug face, his patronizing tone. Mom, you just don't understand the internet. He needed to understand. He needed to feel the sting of public humiliation, the weight of judgment. I opened a new browser tab, navigating to the website of his credit scoring company. There, prominently displayed, was his professional bio, complete with his beaming headshot and a list of his accomplishments. A perfect target. I reached for my phone, dialing a number I hadn't used in years. It was an old friend, a retired journalist with a nose for scandal, and a network of contacts that spanned the city. "Martha," I said, my voice low and steady, "I need a favor." I explained the situation. The video, the humiliation, Julian's role, his condescending attitude, and his easy access to sensitive data. Martha listened intently, her silence punctuated by the occasional of understanding. "I think I can help, Beulah," she finally said, her voice laced with a hint of steel. "Send me everything you have. Names, addresses, the video, the comments. Let's see what we can dig up." I hung up, a sense of calm washing over me. The storm inside had quieted, replaced by a steely resolve. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my narrative, about showing these youngsters that there were consequences to their actions. They thought they could hide behind their screens, their anonymity. They were wrong. I knew their names, their addresses, their secrets, and I was just getting started. The game, as they say, was afoot. The faintest hint of a smile touched my lips as I switched off the lights and locked the door behind me. Tomorrow was going to be a very interesting day. Rain lashed against the windows of my apartment above Carter's grocery, a rhythmic counterpoint to the steady tap-tap-tapping of my fingers on the keyboard. Weeks had crawled by since Eleanor and Julian, along with their friend Chloe, had filmed that humiliating video, turning my life into an online spectacle. "They'll learn," I muttered to myself, the reflection of my face in the darkened screen a grim mask. My revenge wouldn't be swift or flashy. It would be precise, a slow burn, eating away at their carefully curated online personas and the shiny futures they took for granted. First, Julian. He fancied himself a budding entrepreneur, always bragging about his credit score, the key, he claimed, to unlocking his dreams. "It's all about the numbers, Beulah," he'd said once, a smug grin plastered across his face. "Gotta keep that score pristine." Well, Julian, let's see how pristine it stays. I'd spent the last few days familiarizing myself with the online portals of the utility companies. A few carefully placed calls posing as Julian, reporting changes of address he never made, ensuring bills were sent to vacant apartments within the building I owned. Missed payments would start accumulating soon. Let's see how his precious score holds up under the weight of phantom debts. Next, Chloe, the influencer wannabe, obsessed with her follower count. "Engagement is everything, Beulah," she chirped, phone perpetually glued to her hand. "Gotta keep the content flowing." Her content, as she called it, was mostly vapid selfies and sponsored posts for products she probably never used. A little digging revealed her reliance on affiliate marketing, a house of cards built on clicks and commissions. I'd contacted a few brands she frequently promoted, subtly hinting at discrepancies in her reporting. A whisper here, a question there, just enough to sow seeds of doubt. Let's see how her engagement fares when her sponsors start pulling out. Finally, Eleanor, my own daughter. The sting of her betrayal was the sharpest, the wound that festered deepest. "It's just a bit of fun," Mom, she'd said dismissively when I confronted her about the video. Don't be so sensitive. Eleanor dreamt of a career in fashion. Her Instagram feed a carefully curated portfolio of designer clothes and glamorous events, all smoke and mirrors, funded by my grocery store earnings. Her dependence on my generosity was her Achilles heel. I'd already started subtly diverting funds, small amounts at first, just enough to make her tighten her designer belt. The flow of cash that fueled her fabricated lifestyle would soon slow to a trickle. Let's see how her fashionista image holds up when she can no longer afford the facade. The rain continued its relentless drumming against the glass, mirroring the steady beat of satisfaction growing within me. I wasn't interested in destroying their lives, just in dismantling the carefully constructed illusions they hid behind. They needed to understand the consequences of their actions, the weight of their cruelty. They needed to learn respect, not just for me, but for everyone they deemed beneath their social media filters. I closed my laptop, the faint glow of the screen fading away. Downstairs, the lights of Carter's grocery shone brightly, a beacon in the stormy night. It was late, but I wasn't tired. I felt a surge of energy, a quiet sense of purpose. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my narrative, about showing them, and the world, that Bula Carter was more than just the subject of a viral video. I was a force to be reckoned with. I reached for my phone, dialing a number I'd memorized weeks ago, the number of a local journalist known for her investigative pieces on social media scandals. "Hello," I said, my voice calm and steady. "I have a story you might be interested in." I paused, a small smile playing on my lips. "It's about 3 young influencers and the price of online fame." Weeks ticked by, each one a quiet victory. I sat at my computer, a mug of chamomile tea warming my hands. The internet, once a source of so much pain, now felt like a chessboard, and I, the player. "Let's see how they like this," I murmured, clicking open a new browser tab. Eleanor's friend, the one with the shrill laugh, I recalled her name, was Chloe, had posted a frantic update. "Oh my God, my credit score plummeted. What's happening?" it read. Below, a cascade of comments echoed her confusion. "Same here," one wrote. "Mine dropped 50 points overnight." Another chimed in. "I can't get approved for anything. My landlord is threatening eviction." A small, satisfied smile touched my lips. I took a sip of my tea, the warmth spreading through me. These weren't just random complaints. These were the carefully orchestrated consequences of their actions. Remember Julian, Eleanor's fiancé, the one who'd sneered, "Someone should tell Grandma to update her wardrobe." He'd applied for a car loan, a flashy sports car. From what Eleanor had gushed, "He deserves it," she'd told me, oblivious to the storm brewing. Now, his application was denied. I could almost picture his bewildered face, the entitlement draining away. A local news blog, always hungry for clicks, had picked up the story. "Influencer couple's financial troubles," the headline screamed. The article detailed Julian's failed loan application and Chloe's sudden eviction notice. "It appears their lavish lifestyle might be built on shaky ground," the journalist wrote, adding fuel to the online fire. Commenters, quick to judge, speculated wildly. "Karma's a bitch," one quipped. Maybe they should try getting real jobs, another suggested. The video of me, the one that had started it all, was now buried under a mountain of fresh gossip. My phone buzzed. It was Eleanor. "Mom," she began, her voice tight with anxiety. "Have you seen what's happening online? Julian's loan application was denied, and Chloe's being evicted. What's going on? Oh dear," I said, feigning concern. "That's terrible, isn't it? These things happen, though maybe they overextended themselves." Eleanor didn't sound convinced. "But it's so sudden," she insisted. "It doesn't make sense." "Well, dear," I replied gently, "life is full of surprises. My plan, meticulously crafted, was unfolding perfectly. I'd used my knowledge of the building my building, remember, and the interconnected lives of its tenants to my advantage. Chloe's landlord, a stickler for prompt payments, happened to be a regular at my grocery store. A casual conversation about the difficulties of managing tenants, a few carefully dropped hints about missed rent payments and bounced checks, and Chloe's fate was sealed. Julian's loan application, a slightly more intricate maneuver. The loan officer at his bank was the son of Mrs. Henderson, the sweet old lady who lived 2 floors above Julian and Eleanor. Mrs. Henderson loved to chat, and I happened to know she worried about her son's demanding job. A small gift basket, a heartfelt conversation about the pressures young professionals face, a subtle mention of Julian's online antics. It was all it took. Mrs. Henderson, bless her heart, had simply expressed her concerns to her son. "He's one of those influencers," she'd apparently said. "Not exactly the most stable career choice." I closed my laptop, a sense of quiet satisfaction settling over me. The internet, a fickle beast, had moved on to its next target. The comments about my outdated clothes, my grandma style, were fading into the digital ether. My reputation, once tarnished, was beginning to gleam again. But the true payoff, the moment I'd been waiting for, was yet to come. Eleanor and Julian were planning a lavish Christmas party, a celebration of their impending nuptials, a display of their supposed success. I'd been invited, of course, and I planned to attend. After all, what's a little family drama without a grand finale? The bell above the door chimed, a familiar, comforting sound. It had been weeks since the video, weeks since Eleanor, my own daughter, had sided with Julian and his cruel friends, telling me I was stuck in the past and needed to get with the times. They thought my clothes were outdated, my store a relic. They laughed, they filmed, they posted. Now, the store felt like mine again. The quiet hum of the refrigerators, the rustle of paper bags, the scent of ripe fruit, these were my comforts, my constants. I polished the counter, the smooth, cool surface a balm to my still raw nerves. The shame hadn't completely faded, but it was different. It was quieter now, a dull ache instead of a searing burn. A young couple walked in, their faces buried in their phones. They bumped into each other, startled, and then laughed, the sound echoing through the aisles. I smiled. "Good afternoon," I called out, my voice stronger than it had been in weeks. "Find everything all right?" They nodded, still slightly embarrassed, and headed towards the checkout. I scanned their items, making small talk about the weather, the upcoming local festival. They left with a wave, and a thank you, a simple interaction, but one that filled me with a quiet sense of victory. They hadn't recognized me. The video, once so ubiquitous, seemed to have vanished from the internet's short-term memory. Later, as I was closing up, Eleanor called. I hesitated before answering. "Mom," she began, her voice hesitant. "I just wanted to apologize for everything." There was a long pause. "Julian and his friends, they haven't been returning my calls, and things are kind of a mess right now." I listened quietly as she explained how Julian's credit score had mysteriously plummeted, preventing him from securing a loan for the new apartment they'd planned to rent together. His friends were experiencing similar issues, their online reputations inexplicably tarnished. Small, carefully placed whispers online, linking their previous careless social media antics to their current misfortunes, had begun to circulate. No one could definitively trace it back to them, or to me. They were simply reaping what they had sown. "Eleanor," I said finally, my voice even, "everyone makes mistakes. It's how we learn from them that matters." I didn't mention the anonymous tips I'd sent to various online forums, the carefully worded complaints I'd lodged with credit agencies, or the subtly damaging information I'd leaked to local bloggers, all perfectly legal and traceable. I wouldn't tell her about the late-night research I'd done, learning about Julian and his friends, discovering their vulnerabilities, exploiting their online presence against them. They had underestimated me, dismissed me as an old woman who didn't understand the internet. They were wrong. I understood it well enough to use it against them. "I know, Mom," she replied softly. "I really messed up." Another silence hung between us. "Mom, I was wondering, could I maybe come by tomorrow, help you at the store?" I closed my eyes, picturing Eleanor stocking shelves, helping customers, just like she used to before Julian and his friends had filled her head with their shallow values. I thought of the empty apartment above the store, the one I'd been saving for a special occasion. It had originally been intended for Eleanor and Julian, a wedding gift, a fresh start. But things had changed. "Of course, Eleanor," I said, my voice softening. "I'd like that very much. And there's something I want to show you. I think you'll be pleased." I hung up the phone, a small smile playing on my lips. The apartment above the store was still vacant, freshly painted, waiting. It wouldn't be a wedding gift anymore, but perhaps it could be something else entirely. A new beginning, not just for Eleanor, but for me too. A symbol of the quiet strength I had rediscovered, the power I held, and the life I had reclaimed. The bell above the door chimed again as I locked up for the night, the sound a melody of resilience in the quiet evening air. I had been underestimated. They had all underestimated me, and that, I realized, had been their biggest mistake. The Millbrook neighborhood had always been my home, and now more than ever, it felt like mine. "Morning, Mrs. Carter," a young boy called out, waving as he dashed past my grocery store. "Morning, sweetheart," I replied, a genuine smile warming my face. It was a far cry from the whispers and stares I endured just a few months ago. After that dreadful video went viral, Eleanor had called, of course, full of apologies. "Mom, I'm so sorry," she'd stammered. "Julian and I never meant." I'd listen patiently, a quiet resolve hardening within me. Now, the store was bustling, business better than ever. The shelves were stocked, the produce gleaming, the air thick with the comforting aroma of freshly baked bread. Those new pastries are flying off the shelves. Bula, Mrs. Rodriguez, my longtime baker, beamed. You have a knack for knowing what the people want. It's about community. Maria, I said, adjusting a display of ripe mangoes. Knowing your neighbors, what brings them joy. And I did know my neighbors. I knew their preferences, their routines, even their little secrets. It was that knowledge, that intimate connection with Millbrook, that had not only saved my reputation, but had also woven me deeper into the fabric of the community that had rallied around me, not just with sympathy, but with genuine respect. I glanced at the clock. Almost time. I straightened my apron, smoothing out any wrinkles. I'd chosen a vibrant floral print today, a stark contrast to the drab outfit Julian had so cruelly mocked in that video. Expecting someone special, Beulah, Maria asked, her eyes twinkling. Just a delivery, I replied, my voice even, a delivery that would finalize the last piece of my plan. A sleek, black car pulled up to the curb. From it emerged a sharply dressed woman, holding a thick manila envelope. Mrs. Carter, she asked, her voice crisp and professional. That's me. I have the documents you requested, she said, handing me the envelope. Thank you, I replied, my hand trembling slightly as I took it. Inside were the finalized transfer papers for the building. My building. The purchase had been years in the making, a quiet accumulation of savings and strategic investments. I had never broadcast my intentions, preferring to keep my cards close to my chest, especially with Eleanor and Julian. They had assumed, like many others, that my little grocery store was the extent of my holdings. They had underestimated me. Anything else, Mrs. Carter? The lawyer asked, her tone polite, yet tinged with a newfound respect. No, that will be all, I said, a small smile playing on my lips. As she drove away, I returned to the store, the manila envelope clutched tightly in my hand. Later that evening, Eleanor called again. Mom, I heard about the building, she said, her voice hesitant. Julian and I were wondering, well, we're getting married next month, and we were hoping could we possibly hold the reception in the rooftop garden. It would mean so much to us. I listened, the silence stretching between us. I could picture Eleanor, her face a mixture of hope and anxiety. I could hear the unspoken plea in her voice. The rooftop garden was the crown jewel of the building, a breathtaking space with panoramic views of the city. It had always been my dream to share it with my family. Eleanor, I said, my voice soft yet firm, I appreciate you asking, but the rooftop garden is booked for the entire year. I paused, letting the words sink in. However, I continued, I do have a small storage space available in the basement. It's not exactly glamorous, but it's available. And considering your current financial situation, the rent is quite reasonable. Eleanor's gasp was audible. Mom, she began, but I cut her off. Think about it. Dear, I said, my voice laced with a hint of steel, and let me know. I hung up the phone, a wave of satisfaction washing over me. The storage space was damp, cramped, and infested with mice. It was the perfect, poetic justice. The next day, I sat in my office, overlooking the bustling street below. The sun streamed through the window, illuminating the framed photos on my desk. Photos of my family, my friends, my community, my Millbrook. The manila envelope lay open beside them, a testament to my resilience, my foresight, and my unwavering commitment to protecting what I had built. The community had embraced me, lifted me up, and reminded me of my worth. And now I was giving back, not just through my business, but through the quiet acts of kindness and generosity that truly defined Millbrook. The whispers and stares were gone, replaced by smiles and greetings. I was Bula Carter, and I was home.